These are instances where Joe Rogan challenged woke guests on his show.
I mean, if you're choosing to add hormones to a child's body, that's a choice. An actual woman. Yeah, I said actual. Cough.
Gender's not just genitals, it's in your mind.
Right.
This video highlights instances where Joe Rogan took on woke guests during his show. It starts with Adam Conover, who was criticized for his stance on trans children. The conversation began when Joe asked Adam about his perspective on trans athletes. Adam replied that he saw no issue with trans individuals competing.
Sports with trans athletes, that is a sporting world that I'm more interested in.
Joe challenged Adam's point, arguing that it's unjust for a biological woman to face a biological man in competition.
So if you're a woman and you don't take any extra hormones or male hormones, you're not taking steroids or any sort of performance-enhancing drugs, but then someone comes along that was a man for 30 years and decides that they're going to be a woman, and this has happened, and literally transitioned a few months ago, and competes as a woman and destroys records and dominates you in that sport. It's not fair. It's as much cheating as taking steroids when the other person doesn't.
While Joe presents a strong argument, Adam counters by claiming that a level playing field doesn't exist.
I disagree, and
What do you disagree about?
I've already, well, I don't think that there is such a thing as a perfectly level playing field. I think we decide what kind of playing field we want to have.
Sure, but we do make the distinction where we don't allow men to compete in women's divisions.
And I think that that distinction may be breaking down a bit.
Adam supports the notion of dismantling gender boundaries, but Joe Rogan poses a tough question, asking whether men should be permitted to compete in women's weightlifting.
So you think that males should be able to compete in the women's division of weightlifting?
No, I don't necessarily.
But they can if they transition.
After Joe highlights that men can participate in women's sports through transitioning, Adam tries to change the focus. He suggests that because people can start transitioning as young as 7, the biological differences will eventually change.
You're seeing folks transition much earlier age, you know.
Well, but then...
and so if someone is transitioning from the age of 7 years old, right, working with those hormones, from that age, right, they're not going to have, their body situation is going to be very different than the one that you postulated, right?
Joe disagreed with the idea of transitioning children, arguing that 7-year-olds don't even understand who they are.
No reason to give kids hormones, and there's no reason to decide before a person's frontal lobe is completely fully developed, which doesn't even take place till they're 25. You're going to let them decide what sex they're going to be for the rest of their life?
Adam brings up his friend with a trans child, saying that because the child identifies as a girl, hormones are necessary, implying it's not a matter of choice, but Joe disagrees.
I have a friend who has a trans kid. He's explained that my child from a very young age consistently said, I am a girl, and has never contradicted themselves, never changed their mind. And so the humane thing and the thing that he felt was good to do as a parent was to embrace that choice on his child's part, right?
Embrace that choice meaning hormonally.
I shouldn't even phrase it as a choice, embrace that identity.
Okay, but if that's who they are, if they think that they're a girl, why do you have to give them hormones to make them more of a girl?
When Adam is asked a straightforward question, he hesitates, and that's when Joe utterly shuts him down.
Because... I'm sorry, can you expand on the question?
It's a simple question. If you say that the child thinks it's a girl, so you're going to give the child hormones. Mm-hmm. If the child thinks it's a girl, let it be a girl. You don't have... Why are you adding hormones? If you're shooting hormones into a child, and you're affecting the child's development, you're saying that's not a choice. That's nonsense. Of course it's a choice. You're choosing to chemically change this child's body, and you're saying that this isn't a choice. Well, it's definitely a choice to do that.
Lacking a solid argument, the feedback on the video was almost entirely negative. Viewers commented, "If I had a penny for every time Adam said he wasn't an expert, we could hire a real expert to explain how wrong he is." It's obvious that Adam had no clue what he was talking about and was completely destroyed. However, he did listen to Joe's argument without interrupting, unlike the next guest, Pete Dominick, who confidently suggested that the US Constitution should be rewritten.
Our Constitution is also silly. Let's remake everything. Have a serious conversation about what kind of guns and bullets people can have. There's so much better that we can do.
Pete has good intentions and wants reforms to reduce gun violence in America, but the key question remains, how? Studies consistently show that there are too many guns in the US to take them all away. So how can they be collected? Joe Rogan argues that it's impossible, while Pete supports government buyback programs.
There's so many guns, you're not getting them all. It's not possible.
That's the most important point. There's already 330. There's more guns than there are people, so what do? I think you buy as many as you can back for sure. You spend a whole bunch of taxpayer money.
If you wanted to do that without changing the Second Amendment, like you just have a buyback where you just offer people the opportunity to make some money by giving their guns up.
Here, Pete Dominick interrupts Joe's point with a smug attitude, redirecting the discussion by claiming that the Second Amendment has been wrongly interpreted.
The Second Amendment has been interpreted wrong by the Supreme Court, in my opinion. I mean,
Talk about the Second Amendment. I mean, it's a big conversation.
no, because people can have guns. You can have guns. The brick has a right to have guns. You just can't have these guns.
It's obvious that Pete is getting increasingly frustrated. Joe remains calm and collected. Pete keeps interrupting and changing his position. He contradicts himself with every statement. He starts by saying the problem is with the guns and the bullets.
The main issue is definitely the guns and the bullets in them.
Well, the main issue is the person that's capable of shooting people with the guns and the bullets.
No, it's the guns and the bullets.
The guns and the bullet are inanimate objects. Without a person pulling the trigger, we're talking nonsense here.
He then changes his stance, calling it a healthcare issue just half a minute later.
The conversation about like the freedom, like the Second Amendment to me it's just your interpretation, fine. Whatever your interpretation is fine.
That's what's interesting
about it. But there's a human impact. It's a healthcare issue. It's so extreme. It's really, if you want to know the answer to healthcare issues, you should talk to public health experts.
When Joe questions what Pete is talking about, Pete is unable to provide a clear answer and continues to ramble in circles, which he has been doing throughout the whole segment.
But wait, hold on. What research? On what?
Well, they don't have
Mass
enough
murderers?
research on. They don't have enough research on gun violence.
But what are you
unfortunately.
talking about then?
I'm talking about if you want to know the solutions for what is impacting and creating death by any measure, accidental death.
Right, but we're talking about gun violence, right?
Right.
What healthcare professionals have the solutions to gun violence?
This debate was dominated by Joe Rogan, who easily outperformed his opponent. On the other hand, our next guest, Flint Dibble, had a different experience. He got into a heated exchange on episode 2136 of the Joe Rogan Experience with Graham Hancock. The argument was ignited by articles that accused Graham of being a racist and a white supremacist.
People ask, here's just a Google search. Archaeologist Flint Dibble says Hancock's claims reinforce white supremacist ideas, stripping indigenous people of their rich heritage, and instead giving credit to aliens or white people. Actually, I've never...
Did you really say that?
When Joe Rogan asks Flint if he made these claims, Flint denies it over and over.
No, I said that this idea of Atlantis, the way it goes back 200 years, it has been used for those reasons.
So are you saying your quote is incorrect?
I think that it's editing me out of context, Graham. I've never called you a white supremacist or a racist.
No.
Flint maintains that he calls the sources Graham uses racist, not Graham himself. Joe, however, disagrees with this point. He believes that by connecting Graham to these accusations, Flint is attempting to have him canceled.
This quote here, reinforce white supremacist ideas, stripping indigenous people of their rich heritage, and instead giving credit to aliens or white people. None of those things are true.
I know, Graham doesn't even talk about aliens.
Right, but
and
what,
so
did
that's
you
why I'm
say that?
I said that not in specific relation to Hancock's claims, but in specific relation to this narrative of Atlantis that has gone back hundreds of years.
Flint strongly denies these accusations. However, what he wasn't aware of was that Graham had come prepared with more evidence.
Here's the Guardian. So they're misquoting you, are they? As Dibble states, such claims reinforce white supremacist ideas. They strip indigenous people of their rich heritage and instead give credit to aliens or white people. Why didn't you get the Guardian to put that right?
When pushed further, Flynn fails to give a straightforward response and tries to evade the questions.
Well, I don't
Did you
decide
actually
what
say
they
that,
were.
though?
I did not say that Graham reinforces white supremacist ideas. As I've said,
So this
the
quote is not
history,
real?
They stripped the stories of Atlantis? Yes, right?
So the quote, reinforce white supremacist ideas, that's not yours.
No, that's not a quote. It's not in quotation.
Right, it was in the other article. Quote,
This is
though.
your own article, Flint. Here you are. I'm quoting from, that's a quote from your article published in The Conversation. This sort of race science is outdated and long since debunked, especially given the strong links between Atlantis and Aryans proposed by several Nazi archaeologists. You are associating me with this, and you are attempting to get me
I'm asking
cancelled
you to
effectively.
distance yourself from that. Is
But
actually what I'm trying to do.
But that's not what you're doing, though.
Flint keeps avoiding accountability throughout the entire 4-hour podcast, never acknowledging his wrongdoings. This mirrors CNN's false accusation that Joe Rogan was using horse dewormer and jeopardizing public health with his use of ivermectin.
More breaking news this evening. Joe Rogan, an extremely popular podcaster, announced on social media today that he has COVID. In his statement on social media, Rogan said he has taken several therapeutics to recover.
Turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak.
One of those drugs he mentioned, ivermectin, is something more often used to deworm horses.
Joe, however, had his medication prescribed by a doctor and made a full recovery in just 4 days. This is what he had to say about the matter.
Bro, do I have to sue CNN? CNN is saying I'm taking horse dewormer.
Yeah, what? So
They must know that that's a lie.
There's a lot of people saying it.
I literally got it from a doctor.
After revealing the source of the medication, he seals CNN's fate.
This is the grand conspiracy, right? The grand conspiracy is that the pharmaceutical companies are all in cahoots to try to make anybody who takes this stuff look crazy. But what's crazy is look how better I got.
Yeah.
I got better pretty quick, bitch.
let's go to like
CNN even went as far as editing footage of Joe to make him appear severely ill, while also spreading multiple false claims. In the end, it's clear that Joe came out on top, though CNN never admitted to any mistakes. Leave your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.